Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be harvesting tons of leaves off of my moringa plants. I'm in Florida and we're expecting the first storm of our hurricane season, and if I don't harvest all of these leaves, I'm going to lose them because those strong winds defoliate a lot of my trees. So I have a lot to harvest and I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to bring you along, show you how I do it, and also show you how I process leaves because there's quite a few different things that I like to do with them. The main reason why I decided to grow moringa here in my home backyard garden is because it's a superfood. The leaves are a very high source of plant protein. It has iron, calcium, lots of amino acids, and minerals. A lot of people like to harvest the leaves, dry them out, make tea with it, or you can turn it into a fine powder and add it to your smoothies, which is what I like to do with it. But there's lots of other uses for moringa as well. Since this plant is a tropical plant, it grows super fast in tropical or subtropical areas like my garden here in Florida. It produces a lot of biomass that I could use in chop and drop. So if I have extra leaves and branches, I cut them all up and I use them as a mulch underneath a lot of my fruit trees and plants, which is awesome because the leaves are very high in lots of different nutrients. So when I use it as chop and drop mulch, it will break down, compost, and add those nutrients into my soil. You can even use the leaves to make an organic fertilizer. And the last thing I like to do is feed it to my chickens because it's an added nutrient boost for them. If you have any other uses for moringa that I didn't mention, please comment below. I learned just as much from you guys as you do from me. If you're new here, my name is Jara. I teach people how to garden, grow food, raise backyard chickens, and keep bees. So if those topics interest you, make sure you subscribe to my channel because I post about them on a daily basis. And the last thing I forgot to mention is that I actually sell the seeds on my website as well, and I have quite a few seed pods here that I really need to harvest because again, that storm is just gonna blow everything around and I'm gonna lose those seeds. All right, so I'm gonna get started harvesting all the leaves and basically cutting these plants down by at least half. In commercial settings, they harvest these leaves about every 2 weeks, so it's a constant cutting and harvesting type of process. So don't worry about cutting these things down. Some people cut them down at the stump or the trunk, and those things will sprout and grow back. All right, so here's the first branch that I cut off. As you can see, these leaves are really fine and delicate. It's a very pretty plant, actually, very attractive, soft, feathery looking foliage. I haven't harvested leaves in a really long time, so these moringa trees are much taller than what they should be. For the home backyard gardener, you want to maintain them at a comfortable height that you don't need to get up on a ladder to go cut them down. They're probably topping like 20 feet if I had to guess. So the easiest way for me to harvest all of this is literally to cut down these trunks, have the trunk fall over, and then I'll be picking off all of the branches individually. If you're going to be consuming the moringa leaves yourself, like to make tea or make a powder with it, you really want to consume the tender green leaves. So those portions I'll be cutting off and then sending into my kitchen where I'm going to clean them and dry them out. As these pods dry out on the tree, they kind of burst open and all the seeds come flying out everywhere. Here's one that burst open. You can see all the little seeds in there. I'll be taking these out, drying them, and germinating some more plants so I can put it in my second garden, which is a couple acres of land in St. Cloud, Florida. And that's where I have all my chickens. So I'm really trying to grow a lot more moringa plants over there to help feed the chickens. They love it when I bring moringa. All right, so I've harvested everything. Now it's time to go through and cut off the tender, newest green growth, which is on the tips of all of these branches. Try to pick the stems that don't have too much yellowing or older leaves to make your tea or the powder. The older branches, you can cut and try to root them. You just stick them into like a 1 gallon size container. They root pretty easy and you'll have more plants. So you're probably wondering, how do I dry a massive amount of leaves like this? After I wash these in my kitchen sink, I set them all out on a bunch of towels so they get dry before I put them in my herb dryer. This is a 6-tiered herb dryer that I bought specifically for drying my moringa leaves because I harvest so much. But it's also useful to dry any kind of herbs or flowers like my Thai double blue butterfly pea. And I will post a link to Amazon in the description below if you want to get this same one. It takes approximately 2 weeks for these to be fully dried. To wash the moringa, I basically submerge it in water for a few minutes because it basically drowns any little insects and bugs that might be on them. And I have to do this in batches because I have so many leaves. While these are soaking, I like to go through them and start picking off these smaller stems right here. And then I discard the longer, thicker stems over there. I then remove all of the leaves and put it in a strainer just to get off extra water. And this water gets kind of dirty, so I like to change it out before I process the next batch. And this looks crazy. This is my kitchen floor, and I set down some towels because I need these to be extra dry before I put them in that 6-tiered herb dryer. Because I'm in Florida, and even though I have an AC running in my house, it's still very humid in here. And if these leaves don't get really dry, mold will grow on them. So I just dump them out and let them dry for a few hours. Look at all these leaves. Now, some people like to take their moringa leaves and add it to a dehydrator. You most definitely could do that and almost get like instant dried leaves. However, I like to preserve the nutritional content and antioxidants and everything as much as possible. And if you expose it to some heat, even if it's just a little bit of heat, it will damage that or, decrease the nutritional value a little bit. So I'm perfectly fine with just allowing this to dry naturally in my herb dryer. To make fertilizer, it's very, very simple. You'll want to get a strong, good blender to really mix this stuff up. I filled the container halfway with water, and the rest of it we're going to fill with leaves from the moringa. You don't want to blend these really tough stems unless you have a good blender that can power through all of that. But I'm just going to remove some of these to get rid of the big chunks of stems. This is all organic, so I really don't measure how much moringa I'm putting compared to water. But since it's organic, I don't have to worry about it burning my plants like synthetic fertilizers will. I am using a Ninja blender, which I feel does a pretty good job of breaking all of this stuff up. And I use the same blender to powderize the leaves when I get to that point. All right, let's take a look. Man, that is super green. This is chock full of vitamins and nutrients that will really give my plants a nice boost. You can strain this out to take out all the particles of leaves and stems that might be left in here and add this to a sprayer or like a backpack sprayer and use it as a foliar fertilizer if you wanted to. But quite honestly, I pour this into a 5-gallon bucket and then I fill the rest of the bucket with water and then I start fertilizing my plants with it. I just pour some at the base of the plants. If you don't want to go through all the hassle of blending up stuff, you could just lay these leaves and sticks as is at the bottom and around your plants, like your fruit trees and perennials and things like that. And this will just slowly decompose over time and add these nutrients into the soil. All right, once the leaves are pretty dry, I put them in a nice thin layer inside of my herb dryer. And every day, or at least every other day, I will just kind of flip these over just to make sure that everything is drying evenly inside. All right, so it's been a couple weeks and the moringa got all nice and dry. As you can see, everything is really dry and ready for processing. Now I'm gonna show you guys how to blend it up and turn it into a really nice fine powder. I feel like that's the best way to consume it because it's very easy to put a scoop or two of the powder into like a smoothie, boil it with some hot water to make a tea, or you can even get some empty capsules and fill it up with the powder to ingest it like a vitamin pill. The easiest way that I have found to process a lot of moringa into a really nice fine powder without having to buy big expensive blenders is to use a Ninja blender, but make sure you get like the personal size smoothie cup. Don't use the big, regular blender container that it comes with. I find that if you use the big ones, there's a lot of space in there, so these leaves and sticks kind of just swirl around and they don't really get blended up. But if you use something smaller, they kind of have no choice but to fall upon the blades and it helps get it nice and smooth. We're gonna blend everything, including the fine little sticks, because the entire part of the moringa plant is edible, so that's totally okay. I like to blend everything first and then pass it through a fine mesh strainer like this. That way the very fine powder can fall to the bottom. And if there's any leaves or sticks that still need to be blended up a little bit more, it will remain in this mesh strainer, and then I'll pass it through the blender again. So fill it up as much as you can. I'm making a big mess filling up this cup with all these leaves. So pro tip, fill it up inside of the bowl with the leaves so you don't get it all over your kitchen counter. Put it on your Ninja blender. My Ninja blender has quite a few different options here. I'm going to use the extract option because I feel like it really pulses all the leaves much better than some of these other options. But if you don't have this particular model of a Ninja blender, just go with your high setting. Man, this extraction setting worked really well. All of this is like pure powder in there. This blended so fine that honestly, I don't think I have to pass it through again. Yeah, it looks perfect actually. I'm still gonna pass it through here anyways. You never know if there might be like a little stick or something left. Just repeat this process until you're done turning everything into a nice fine powder. All right, so I finished blending everything for the first pass. I'm gonna pass everything through this fine mesh strainer. I'm gonna use a bigger bowl for this, just makes it easier. And then whatever particles are left behind, I'm gonna process them again through the blender. It's kind of like passing powdered sugar through a mesh strainer to get it really nice and fine. And one thing you can do with this powder is add a scoop or two into like your watering can before you water your plants, just to give them a little bit of a natural fertilizer. This smells very similar to matcha green tea, just so you know, and it has a very vibrant green color as well. There is still a tiny amount of little sticks and particles, but this is good enough for my needs without having to buy a really expensive blender. And here you have it, how to process moringa and turn it into a very fine dry powder at home without very expensive equipment. If you have any tips or tricks or products that you personally like to use to get a really nice fine powder when you're drying herbs, leaves, etc., please let me know in the comments below. If you want to get the same exact blender and other supplies that I was using during this video, I will definitely put links in the description below. Thank you for watching and happy gardening!